I want to thank Jaden for reading that. There's a lot of complex names. But actually, that is what today's message is about. Okay, I think I'm going to need some help on this because this may not be working. There we go. There. I've entitled today's sermon, These Are the Names. There's a lot that happens in the book of Romans, and we only had 3 sermons to get through it, so we just did the beginning, the middle, and the end. And it makes sense because the beginning is all the greetings and so on, and what the book is about. We had Pastor Lawrence come and preach about Romans 12, which is actually the turning point between the theological front end that has all the ideas of Christianity laid out, and then the practical back end about what it means to live out that gospel with other people. So if you want, I urge you to read the entire book of Romans. There are 16 chapters, and we are jumping right to the last one. So beginning, middle, and end. The thing about the end is this. It is, as Jaden has read for us, filled with names. That we often, when we get to the Bible, whether it's in the Old Testament or New Testament, there's a lot of names, and it's not just, like a baby name finder type of thing. It's, you just read through, or sometimes we just go skip. Because, for example, in Genesis, they have so-and-so who begat so-and-so, and begat so-and-so, and begat so-and-so, and it just goes on and on for a chapter or two. But there are other places where we find names, even in our century, I'll say. Take, for example, this piece of literature. Does anyone know what this is? Younger people are like, what is that? Who's seen these things before in their lifetime? Oh, that's good. Most of us still. The younger ones are going, I don't know what these adults are talking about. This is, of course, the what? The phone book. And in particular, it is... These are the white pages. The yellow pages are where they put the... So the yellow pages are where they put the businesses, right? So if you're looking for plumbers, or the plumbing section. If you're looking for, rocket scientists, I don't know. So you can find the people in the yellow pages. But the white pages are just alphabetical order of everyone in the municipality by their last name. So you can imagine in some cities the white pages are like this thick. And the crazy part is like once every year or 2 or maybe 3, sometimes even, the 1 year ones, they will drop, a phone company would publish just the white pages and the yellow pages, which is another stack of paper, and they would put it on your porch. I don't know if people remember these. Phone books were used for doorstops, as high chairs, things like this, booster chairs, because who's using these things? And it used to be a thing where people who would show their feat of strength would take, the phone book and rip it in half. And there's like people like, oh, it's incredible, so strong. But because they were ridiculously thick. Now this is a pretty thin one, so this must be a small municipality. But nobody reads the phone book, especially the white pages, unless you were looking someone up. Like you say, I can't remember my friend's phone number. I know their last name. I just met this person. I'm going to look them up. And so you look up the last name, and then you just go through. And I have to tell you, some people have the same names, so that can be complicated. And they would also, in some cases, publish the address. So you know where they live, everything else. In the time of privacy, not a good thing, right? But back in the day, people were trusting each other, and they say, look, if I need to find someone, this is what you have, the white pages. And so the names, this is the book of names. And the names mattered if you were looking for someone. So we talked about technology, or Anna did. So now technology has put us somewhere else. And we have these names, but I have to tell you, it's hard. Have you ever tried to find someone on Facebook or some other kind of social media, and they're using some different name? It's not like, not Ted Ing, because that's kind of boring. It's more like, I am, Super Space Cadet 316, or, something like this. It's like crazy. So you try to read these names and go, I don't know who my friends are, so you have to just connect in the right place. So these names are not necessarily helpful, but this is the modern day. They're not giving you your phone number away, your address, or anything like that. Also, check your Facebook, your social media sort of security features. That's what we're dealing with nowadays. But there's a list of names. Whether your friends, your list, whatever social media app you're using, there's a list of names. But nobody reads it just for the names. It's the content. It's the TikToking, it's the whatever pictures they're posting up. That's what we're looking at. The names, who cares? Here's another place where we had names. This is Hamlet, for those of you who recognize the characters. In front of playbooks, back in the day, they would list all the characters that were, going to show up. Mainly because if you're going to be an actor, you have to know your part. And so you want to know who the characters are. And no one really, they make you do it in high school, read plays, And so you'd read these list of characters, but most people would just watch it like watching a movie. I don't know if you've seen, this is the old school end credits to a movie. And I don't know if anyone here actually sticks around to watch ending credits, except for people who are watching Marvel movies because they put a whole bunch of stingers in it, so they can't stick around to just wait for that scene. But those are all the people who worked on the movie. It's crazy. Like hundreds of people, 1,000 people, something like this. Insane amounts of work. And of course they get credited, and that's the credits. On a more serious note, there's other places where we find names. Not just on the internet, not just in the phone book, not just in playbills or ending credits. Does anyone know where this is? Anyone? Just call it out. New York. This is the 9/11 monument. And these are the names of all the people who died in that tragic event. And so this is a memorial, and the names matter because people will go there and they will remember that was their brother, their sister, their son, their daughter, whoever it was, their husband, their wife, the people that they lost, and they remember them. And so these names, for people who don't know, it's just a part of the monument. But you will have people reading these names. Now, something a little closer to home. I don't know if you know these monuments that have names. Does anyone know where this is? Richmond. Where in particular? Has anyone seen this? What is that? Gary Point. That's right off of Steveston. It's actually a beautiful monument, and it's of course a beautiful part of Richmond. But if you go down the dike, of Richmond, or if you're at Steveston and you go towards the west, towards the water, deeper towards the ocean, this is actually a fisherman's monument. And at the base of this monument, this is actually a mending needle for nets. That's what that actually is. It's the shape of it. And at the bottom is all the names of the crews and all the people who were lost at sea as fishermen. And they remember them. And they put their names there. How about this one? You might be able to guess if you're reading some of the names, but do you know where this is and what it is? Maybe I should. This is a more tricky one because I just had a close-up of the names there. Air India. Do you know where that is? It's actually in Stanley Park, I believe, just off of Stanley Park towards the south end of Stanley Park. This is the Air India Monument, and here you have all the names of the people who were killed in the bombing of that airplane many years ago. One more. This is an interesting monument. Does anyone know what this is? This is a little more unknown, but it's also local to our city. This is the monument to the Komagata Maru, a ship that came in the earliest 20th century, filled with people who were seeking asylum in Canada. But they were turned away. And they were sent back to India, where a number of them were actually killed. And this stands as a monument. All their names are actually on this right-hand panel. And you will find this in Cole Harbor. And what it was about and why we have a monument to it, it's a reminder to us that these people who sought a better life, who sought shelter from Canada, were turned away. And all their names are written here. It's an astounding thing to have a city and have a country say, this is a mistake that we want to remember. But their names are there. So what's in a name? You begin to realize that the Bible is filled with names, not because they're inconsequential, not because the writer's saying, okay, you skip this, but there's actually a significance to the names that are named. And what we have here is the passage that was read for us. This is the first part, or half of chapter 16. And I've highlighted all the names because they're significant. They name Phoebe right off the bat, who's commended by Paul. And then you go through the list, and it tells you exactly what it is about these people that Paul connects with, and who they are to him, encourage them. Priscilla and Aquila, who risked their lives to help him. I'm sure there's a story in there somewhere. We just don't have it. But perhaps the Romans knew of it, because Priscilla and Aquila are there. And they actually have a church in their home, much like how our church started. And then you get Epaenetus, who is incredibly the first convert in that region. Like, that's something else, right? He's like, who's going to be the first one who's going to follow Jesus in a new city, let alone a new region? So he's known. And you just go down the list, and all these names and different house churches as well. You know, it's something else to read a list of names, but then to be told why they're significant. To know the story or a little bit behind their names. And so we have all these names of people who are being greeted by Paul at the end of Romans. And yes, there is a section here about teaching against people who divide people. And there's a reason for this. Because this list of names is about community, both far and wide. This is Paul's community of friends in Rome where he's never been. He has friends there in Christ. Did you know anywhere you go in the world, there are Christian believers who will recognize you as a brother or sister in Christ. They see you and they will know you. Not personally, but because of Jesus, they are there. And you are there. And when you're together, you don't want to be divided, which is why Paul will write this section right in the center. So on the front end, you have all these people who are being greeted, and then you have all the people who are sending greetings. So you begin to recognize that the book of Romans, as famous as it is, sometimes it's called the Constitution of Christianity because of its front end and all the understanding of the ideas of the gospel. You realize that Timothy is there, Lucius is there, Jason and Sosipater. And then you have actually the person who's writing it. You're going to realize, wait a minute. So Paul is actually dictating this thing. And there's a guy named Tertius sitting there going, okay, can you say that again? he's writing it down as Paul is dictating his letter, and Tertius gets in on the deal. He says, I want to say hi to my friends too. I want to say hi. So he writes his line. And then they talk about Gaius, whose house they're probably staying at, who probably has a house church, and is the host of that. And then they have some significant people too, like Erastus, who is a public works minister in that city. This is probably in the city of Corinth. And if you know anything about Corinth, well, you probably don't. It's basically the Las Vegas of the ancient world. Like all the things that are crazy that happen, it happens there. Or pick another city. It could be there. And if you read the people that they had greeted, they were the people, some of them have significant names related to certain people. There's a guy named Rufus, and we know that there's another Rufus referred to in the Gospels who is the son of the person who carried the cross of Jesus. Now there's a question then, is this the same Rufus? Because they were visiting the city from somewhere else. Is this who it was? Anyways, they had all these other names too. Some are imperial names, so they may have been tied to the house of the aristocrats. So there's people throughout, like some were slave-oriented names. So as we study the names, we can realize, this name has a particular background to it, possibly. And so scholars have sort of explored some of these things. But there's stories behind every name. Why does this matter? There is another portion of the Scriptures that talks about a book of names. There is a book that is referred to called the Book of Life, into which the names of all who follow God, their names are placed there. And those whose names are not in that book, well, there's those people too. And it's not a phone book. It's not a how I get in touch with this person. It's like this person lived faithful and true in the best way that they knew how. This person desired to follow God. And this person received mercy and grace. This is about community. The church is not about us being alone. It never was. Individualism was not a grand idea of the ancient world. It is a more modern understanding. There are good things that come from it because it allows us the uniqueness of ourselves. And we always recognize that our individual God-given gifts and talents and purposes in the community. But there's a very dark side to our individualism as well, where we say we don't need anyone. I am self-sufficient. My interests, my perspectives, my understandings are the measure for my world. And so we begin to reduce the world into our own selves, which has been a curse, because it leaves us alone and isolated, leaves us lonely, it leaves us ignorant, intolerant. We listen only to ourselves. And we celebrate this with the cult of celebrity by elevating particular names and particular people that become our examples and the goal of what our lives are meant to be. This is not the way of the gospel. The way of the gospel has always been one of community, in which the person sitting next to you matters. The person sitting behind you matters. The person sitting in front of you matters. The people in the same room as you matter. But even further beyond that, we begin to understand that our lives are not meant to be lived alone. As human beings, God did not create us to be alone. When Adam was alone, it was God's first declaration of, this is not good for this human being to be alone. And he goes, go forth and fill the world. Not merely to dominate it, not to use up all the burden of resources, so that you can be in community, an ever-growing love and expansion. This is part of an extension of our understanding of the Trinity, that God Himself is not alone. That's still a mystery, so bear with me. The community of God. But what does this mean for us? How do we consider this and practically think this stuff out and apply this? How do we move against this tide of individualism that has been bred into our society, into the ways that we think? I wish I could fix it in like the next 5 minutes, because that would be easy. But it's not that simple. So the best I can do right now is to ask you to do something. And that is to think of 2 or 3 people who are not in your household, because obviously mom and dad should, have an influence on you and help you out. But what I'm going to ask you to do is this. To think of 2 or 3 people, but not necessarily just on your own. And this is what I mean. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and listen to the Holy Spirit. And let Him bring to you the image of a few people in this church community that you appreciate.